It's the Draftsmen Show.
I love hearing you talk about the medium.
Ah, good.
One thing that you have been strong on since I first saw your work, apart from imagery, has been technique. You seem like you don't need anyone to teach you anything about technique because you're going to experiment with it, play with it, push it, challenge it, run with it, and love of textures. Keep going. Tell us other favorite media, favorite papers even. You mentioned illustration board. Crescent illustration board, I assume?
Strathmore. So really, I think I always get these confused. I think it's the hot press. That's the really smooth surface.
Yes.
So I don't like anything with texture. I would prefer it to be super smooth so I can get really nice detail. And so hot press illustration board or gessoed masonite, and you sand that with like a 400 grit, so it's just like glass. And I love that surface. I mean, I love detail so much, but I have a tendency to want to get to the detail too quickly. And learning how to use big brushes first has been a real big learning curve for me, because growing up, I saw artwork that was so detailed and I wanted to capture that detail just like I love rendering. I could render myself into my own grave and not even know it and just keep going because I really enjoy it. But yeah, something with no tooth, because paper does bite.
Now, April, I am surprised. I am surprised to hear you say that, because I assumed on a number of your pieces that the tooth of the paper was how you were getting the gritty texture. But now that you're telling that you want a surface as smooth as glass, that means all of that texture is coming from you doing a million little noodly lines and building the texture in slow motion manually.
Yes and no. A lot of texture I can give credit to the texture in the paint, in the oils or the watercolor that I'm using. And much like what, Drew Struzan does when he does his amazing paintings with the acrylic and the texture that he does. And then he, draws to bring out the texture. Like he understands to just let the texture do the talking for you. I've been trying to get into more of that, but yeah, using more of the painting medium as a means of gaining texture rather than the surface providing it.
So that when you put down some paint, it's like if you put it down with a paint roller, it's going to have a little grit to it. You put it down with a paint brush, it's going to have a little, some of the evidence of the brush hairs in it. And so you put that to use.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It does a lot of work for me.
I'm glad to hear that, because I found when I was a student that working on the plate finish Strathmore, which was wonderful.
Oh, I love that stuff.
For its,
yeah,
that's the hot press Strathmore paper. That it was great for pen and ink because you could get such a clean line, but that as soon as you used colored pencil on it, Prismacolors in particular, because they were so waxy, it was like working on wax paper, is that everything would just slip off. Whereas as soon as we went to, they used to call it kid finish, as I recall, but it was the cold press. It had just enough tooth to it to where if you were drawing something like a flannel shirt, you didn't have to render the texture. You would just let the colored pencil run over the tooth of it, and it would automatically give that flannelly look. And we grew to really love that, and we found out that you could put a wash underneath there first and then put a complementary color or an analogous color over the top of it and get that sense of the layering. What else? What other media? Since this is for the world, and they want to know, what media do you love? Anything else you want to tell us about art supplies? April loves art supplies. And I'm sure that if we were to swivel the camera around your studio is the treasure trove of all of the art supplies you're going to find in one place in Laguna Beach. Tell us about any others that you love.
I know I touched on it briefly, but I just got to say how much I love ballpoint pen. I think it's a medium that is, and it's growing more in popularity. It's a medium that can do so much for you it's not something that you hear used in classes or taught in the school. It's not seen as this medium like a mechanical pencil or a 2B pencil or a piece of charcoal. A ballpoint pen, normally think about that's the pen you use to sign your name, when you're doing your signature at the bank. But it does so much more. It can produce incredible shading, and there's all different kinds. And if you apply a ballpoint pen to a piece of just 8.5 by 11 sheet of white paper, that velvet finish on that paper with the ballpoint pen that just glides across it like an ice skater, and it leaves that pen mark you just made. Not only is it permanent, and it teaches you to not sketch, but you put the idea down with confidence. And from there, I actually build my pencil. I go in reverse.
That's interesting.
So I put the pen down first, and then I go into pencil or colored pencil, and because it's almost like I'm just allowing myself to engage with the piece rather than with the pencil. I'm kind of sketching my way, and I love pencil. There's a time and place for it, and I only used pencil for years because for a time I really believed that I would never use color. Not until I got into junior high school, I used only pencil. Because I believe the true artist knew how to use pencil really well. And I actually forbid myself to use color for years. And I don't know where I got that in my brain. Like, no, I'm only going to use pencil. I'm never going to use color. I'm never going to use pen. I'm just going to use pencil. And I prided myself in that for a while. But then you get older and you start to realize, no, wait. Art is so much more than just pencil. There's pen, and there's colored pencil, and there's in the beginning, when I first tried oils, and this was just in high school for my first time, I hated oils. Hated it. It was gooey. It didn't do what you wanted it to do. It was messy. You had to take the time to squeeze out the color onto on the palette, and you gotta make your color. And I'm like, okay, this is stupid. I don't like this medium at all. And then I went into acrylics after that. And for me, that worked well because then I felt like I'd found a medium that dried quick. I could figure out how to mix color properly. And once it's down, it's down. I mean, there are tricks to that, but I felt like that was a good intro to painting for me was trying acrylics first and then getting into watercolor. Because then I feel like I have more confidence with paint in itself as a medium. And then 14 years later, I get into oil again, and I fall in love with it.
Wow. So it was just a matter of when you were ready for it. And tell us what you love about oil.
There's such an intimate connection with oil when you're painting. It's like when you paint with oil, it's like I can feel this golden thread that just attaches my arm to the brush. And it's not just about, I put the paint on. You can hold that brush in so many different positions, and each one's going to give you a specific gesture of sculpting the paint onto the surface and even applying it. And there's so many different mediums you can use with oil. Every artist has their own concoction. Some artists just use oils as they are. Some people don't mix anything, but I like to use a little bit of the terpenoid or Gamsol, the little bit of walnut oil or linseed oil, and so that gives me just like a perfect blending with the oil, and it's like warm butter on toast.
Yeah, wow. I'm feeling like this is going to be useful for people who even aren't seeing the pictures because of the fact that it makes you want to go buy oils and get some absorbent paper and some resistant paper and all sorts of different surfaces to experiment with them. And you're not the first person that I've heard who loves oil paint who has likened it to painting with colored butter. But yes, it seems to me that one of the most important things about mastering any medium is to love the medium, to love it so much that you want to work with it for many, many, many hours, because you will, Why work with something? Why learn to play an instrument that you don't like playing?
Low-doo-doo-doo-doo, low-doo-doo-doo-doo,